Great. Good afternoon, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so honored to have this opportunity to bring a panel like this together to an audience like this. We are hoping to have many more of these panels. I just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Karen Garcia. I co-chair the SAWAN with Ishita. That is also on here. Ishita is a partner at Brooks, and she's currently also the president of SABA Michigan. I'm just going to do a very brief introduction, but then we'll have the panels, share a little bit more about themselves. We have our moderator, Priya Batija, who's the CEO of New Health. She's also the host of the podcast, The Women's Health Playbook. I hope you guys are able to check her out, and I'm sure some of you already know Priya personally. Then we have our next panel is Dr. And if you would, as I call your name, please just maybe wave so that the panelists or the audience is able to see who you are. We have Dr. Jyotsna Butt, who is a clinical psychologist and has her own practice, Butt Psychology LLC in New Jersey. We have our own very own Tara Raghavan. I'm sure she is someone who does not need an introduction. Tara is a partner at Benesh. She's also an active member of Saba NA and the Saba Foundation. Tara is also a past president of Saba NA. Next, we have Dr. Harita Raja, who is a woman psychiatrist and also a co-founder of South Asian Her. I hope you guys have had the opportunity to check that out on Instagram, but if not, please do so. And last but not least, we have Jaya Reddy, who is a family law attorney in California. She works at Meekins Law, and she's the she's the current president of APABA Silicon Valley. Thank you guys again for joining. I know this was a last minute panel that we put together, but I'm so thankful that we've come together to provide information like this. I feel like topics like mental health are extremely important, especially in 2026 and especially in our culture. I think it's one of the topics that is considered a little taboo to still discuss, even though we're in 2023. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to Priya, who is our moderator. Please, Priya, take it away.
Yeah. Thanks, Kieran and Ishita and Saba and Sawan and all of our partners for hosting this discussion and elevating the importance of mental health. So, as many of you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. What you may also not know is that May is also Women's Health Month, and May is also Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So today, as we wrap up all of those awareness months and celebrations, I think it's the perfect time for us to discuss the intersectionality of being South Asian, being women, and addressing our mental health so that we can be the best possible versions of ourselves, both professionally and personally. So I just want to start by sharing a little bit of my why and why this topic is so important to me. As Karen mentioned, I'm the CEO of New Health, which is focused on providing strategic advisory services to healthcare organizations that want to expand how they deliver healthcare to women. That includes mental health care. I'm also the host of the Women's Health Playbook podcast, which is focused on making healthcare, including mental health, easier for women. I've been a SABA member my entire sort of legal career, and I have been a health law attorney. I have worked in a law firm setting, in-house at two different healthcare systems, and then switched over to the policy space and worked at one of the largest healthcare advocacy organizations in Washington, D.C., the American Hospital Association. So being a SABA attorney is part of who I am. I also, back in the day, created Saba Wellness, which still exists today and focuses on improving physical and mental health for the Saba community. And then this topic is very personal to me. I have been in therapy for 25 years, actually since my first year in law school, because I struggled a lot my first year in law school. And I have been fortunate to have the same therapist for the last 17 years. Her name is Ruth Ann. And I think she's saved my life in so many different ways. But she has certainly made me a better professional and a better human, a more self-aware human that continues to grow and evolve. And I can honestly say that without addressing my mental health and working with her for all of these years, I wouldn't be able to thrive in the way that I do every single day. So this is professional, this is personal for me, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to moderate a conversation with our excellent group of panelists. I'm not going to try to introduce each of them. I want them to share their journey, the work that they're leading, why they're excited to be on this panel. So let's jump in and get started. Jaya, can I start with you to share a little bit more of your background and the work that you're leading related to mental health?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you said Tara. Sure. I don't think I've met many of you that are here today, so it's really nice to see a bunch of new names. I am a family law attorney in Silicon Valley, as mentioned previously. Some of the mental health work that I lead is more so it's in my practice as a family law attorney. I don't have a blog, I don't have a podcast, but a lot of what I do is individual one-on-one with clients. I see the impacts of declining mental health in my clients all the time. There's this understanding that divorces can last on average over a year. I think in Silicon Valley, it's more like 2 years on average. Um, and over that 2 years, you see a lot of ups and downs with your clients. You even see it with their kids. And often, actually, it's more common with kids because, at least in the Bay Area, there's a really good culture of checking in with each other. So I provide resources to my clients. I'm constantly checking in. I'm also providing resources to them for their children. We take a family-based approach to a lot of cases. If the kids aren't doing well, it's not, we have to, set aside our legal concerns and really focus on what's best for the kids. The law also allows for that. Um, in my personal life, I push therapy on everybody. So I tell everyone to go to therapy. And yet, I think we'll get to this later on, and yet I have not even told my own parents that I'm in therapy, and I have been for over a year. So there's still a little bit of a stigma there, but that's kind of the work that I lead. It's not formalized, but it's definitely a big part of my day to day.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jaya. And I'm excited for you to dive into all of that more, and so excited that as an attorney, you are able to provide that support and lead your clients to the right resources as they're going through really tough times in their lives. Tara, I'll turn to you. Can you share a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Tara Raghavan. I'm a partner at Benish, an IP partner where, I practice in patent litigation counseling, regulatory counseling, and all things like that. Like Priya, I'm somewhat of a SABA junkie. I've been involved with SABA through my entire career. I've been the president of SABA Chicago. I've been on the SABA Chicago Foundation. I've been the president of SABA North America and have been on many different positions on the SABA North America board, most recently president a couple of years ago. And then I was also on the SABA North America Foundation. And for the first time in probably 20 plus years, I'm not on anything, which is a rarity. And all of this is part of a long-term journey with being a lawyer in general and having to deal with different mental health issues along the way. I've been pretty candid about this. I've had cancer. I have gone through a divorce. That was actually the least difficult of these challenges. I remarried and have gone through fertility challenges, which I'll get into a little bit more. And just, like challenges about moving positions and all of that, all of which have caused a lot of like mental health struggles. And I'm not even saying I'm at the top level of that. It's primarily anxiety. I also have seen a therapist for over 10 years. And also, like Jaya, push therapy on everyone. I think it's a good idea. Even whether you like it or not, you're going to have challenges in life where you need to talk to someone with a neutral viewpoint on those issues. And there is a benefit to have some cultural competency in that struggle. And I'm excited to have Jyotsna and Harita on board to talk a little bit about how that plays out. But truly, my therapist is a wonderful woman who has helped me through a number of challenges. And I think that to me is why I'm here. But I'm also here because I love creating, supporting spaces for South Asian attorneys and women in particular, whether or not it's in mental health. And, we literally had another SAWAN conversation about difficult conversations 2 days ago. And I put that one together, and I spoke yesterday on business development. So I'm just 3 for 3 on just presenting this week on the struggles for women. And I'm so excited to get into today's conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Tara. And I think what you will see as a common theme in this conversation is the therapy push. I think all of us are therapy pushers in the sense that we believe in the value that it can offer to our lives. Speaking of therapy, Jyotsna, can I turn to you to share more about your work?
Sure. I just want to make sure. Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah, first of all, I am so grateful to be here with all of you and just hearing from the three of you, Priya, Tara, Jaya, like what you've been saying about your therapist and about how you've been pushing mental health. Like, I don't even know. It feels very touching. And the fact that you've been with your therapist for 17 years, like that just reminds me of one of my clients who I think went through high school into junior high to high school now and going to college. It just reminds me of that. It's just so beautiful. And I know Harita probably can relate as well. So that makes me so happy to hear this, first of all. And thank you to Kieran and the team for inviting me to join all of you. And I'm a clinical psychologist and not really new to the South Asian attorney space. I've had several occasions to join SABA panels and also have many clients that are attorneys. I love my attorney clients, the ones that come, because I know that they want to they're at a place where they're at a breaking point lots of times and desperate, and they want to get the help, they want to change, and they want to see the change within themselves, within their families. And so I'm always so happy to, and they'll do the work, they give them all work. But the point being, yes, I love working with this group of professionals. But yes, I am SciPact certified, meaning I can offer telehealth also across 40 states, but I'm licensed in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I am also an avid mental health advocate. This began around, I guess, 2014 when I started having my first sort of few South Asian clients. And I started seeing sort of a trend of coming in, not able to really share as much, feeling embarrassed that they were even talking about therapy, that they would be, in trouble with their families if people found out. So I decided to start, kind of writing about some of these issues. And I had written a few pieces, and then more recently gotten into writing for Psychology Today, hosting my own blog. And that has just been such an exciting journey because I really get to put my voice out there and as an advocate, to sort of explore the lots of issues, the intersectionality between culture, ethnicity, and mental health, immigrant stress, and what we all can relate to, right? Intergenerational trauma, marriage, divorce, domestic violence, colorism, LGBTQ plus issues, et cetera. So that has been really just a wonderful journey for me. I've been able to talk to some amazing people and highlight and amplify some of these voices. I did do a piece with attorneys, and appreciate, the folks that joined from SABA, and really learning a lot from everyone that shared and continuing to do work like this. I'm also realizing that it's important to start, when we're talking about intergenerationally, start at a young age with children. So I'm co-authoring a children's book series to be released in the fall to start the first book, and also co-producing a film on colorism, which is based on a memoir. I'm just really grateful to be in these projects and in these spaces right now, because I think what's happening right now compared to where things were before is there is a lot of speaking out. There is a lot of, we need to really move the conversation forward. We need to really break the cycles moving ahead. So thank you so much, Priya.
Thanks, Josna. And we're going to touch on a lot of the things you just mentioned in more detail as we go through our conversation. Haritha, last but not least, can you tell us a little bit more about you and your work?
Of course. Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to Saba and Sawan for having us. I am so excited because I'm a women's psychiatrist by training, and when I started my practice, I really just focus on women, and I was so excited to see women, and I thought, I'm Indian. People are going to come see me because I'm Indian, like South Asians will come see me. And being in practice for over a decade, I've seen less than 10 in my practice. And I say that because there is so much stigma. And what I wanted to see and what I wanted to help with was the suffering and silence. And so for me, I have really found other avenues to capture women's mental health and the South Asian experience. So I've created a community-based organization called the Rathrani Collective in Maryland. And also, as Kiran had said, I'm co-founding a South Asian Her, which is a nonprofit focused on South Asian women's health because we have unique health risks there. But the idea is education and awareness. And I feel like I'm at home as we talk about therapy and we talk about getting care. But I think, what I'm excited to talk about and really get into is like when you know you need help. So many of us are just taught to keep going and suffering in silence. And I think these are the moments where sometimes we just need to take a moment and sit back and say, like, what do I need? We're always sort of being there for everybody else as women, as maybe some of your mothers, daughters, sisters, etc. And I just ask you, if nothing else today, just take a step back and think, like, what may I need also to sort of be my best self? So I obviously can talk forever on women's mental health, but I'm going to let Bria go ahead and get started. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And Haritha, I'm just going to stay with you and pick
Sure.
up on something that you just mentioned, which is that as South Asian women, we have certain mental health challenges that are a little bit different or appear differently based on our community. Can you dive more into that and maybe share a little bit more about the specific issues you're trying to touch on with South Asian Her?
Yeah, so South Asian Her definitely is more related to physical and mental health issues that are unique to us. For example, an increased risk of cardiac disease, an increased risk of diabetes. I know we're here to talk about mental health, but the reason I say these things is that often we're looking at mental health as a separate issue. And the reality is mental health and physical health are very closely connected. And when we know that women who have chronic depression or anxiety are at higher risk of chronic physical disease too. I think as Josna was, alluding to, we have different risk factors as South Asian women in our mental health. And I think we can't forget the cultural piece of this. I think we would be ignoring a huge part of why. We come from a collectivist society. There are certain societal expectations as a woman, as depending on if you're a first generation immigrant or a second generation immigrant, how you were raised in your family to have boundaries. But asking for help is something that we are taught that you don't do outside of your family structure, right? Things stay private in our family. And so asking for help from therapy or a psychiatrist, it doesn't feel safe because it feels like it's outside of us. The reality is that being South Asian doesn't protect us from having depression and or anxiety. 1 in 5 of us will have clinical depression and or anxiety. There are a lot of us here today, 1 in 5, right? So if we think of this as an uncommon issue, we're fooling ourselves. And then as a community, we're suffering because it has long-term consequences. So I think it's really understanding that not only do we have depression, anxiety, but then we're not utilizing the care and the services that can help us in that avenue.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Josna, I know you mentioned this in your introduction too. So what else do you want to add on sort of the piece of us being South Asian in all of this?
Well, I kind of want to bring it into a legal context or like I loved what Harita said, by the way, and I want to check out your stuff. I'm excited to see that. So some of the things that have come up for me when I've been talking to attorneys and also the pieces that I've written about is, it's a very different process than going into medical school for lawyers when you get into this field. And I'm thinking about, maybe people that are starting to just get into the field versus people that are already in the field right now. But and you may remember this in your own sort of journey about how you don't have maybe the right as much support, and it can be a very lonely road. You have to sort of prepare. You don't have anyone who can truly prepare you for this unique experience of being a hyphenated or bicultural professional in this space. And one of the things, one of the boss in a Boston panel, an attorney, a South Asian attorney, stated that Asian women haven't been in the legal field long enough to have these decades of mentors above them. So to have those people sort of paving the way, and that's really important, right? In big law and sponsorships and networks, all of that is really crucial. So you're kind of on your own trying to figure this out. There's a lot of relying on yourself and having to sort of learn on the go, right? Networking, put yourself out there, building your own books. It's not necessarily handed down to you. And your family doesn't necessarily understand some of this. And there's a lot of sort of balancing those expectations from, parents just want to be proud and happy that you've accomplished this or you're doing this work, but I don't know, do they understand the actual work that goes into it, the sweat, blood, and tears? One of a law student I talked about described feeling pressure to be a powerful role model, but hiding her own vulnerability. So her family wouldn't see her as weak. I think we continue that sort of, as Haritha talked about, we kind of continue that sort of narrative for ourselves. There's a lot of gender and cultural bias, right, in the field, and South Asian women are considered part of this model minority. There's this notion that, we'll work with the minimal complaining. But in this profession, you're asked to speak up. You have to be assertive. You have to put yourself in front of, as people in a way that may not always be, you may not be socialized to do, may not be comfortable doing it. And that can also feel stressful, isolating, and anxiety producing. And also another thing that had come up with clients that I've talked to is this whole, like, what school am I going to, whether it's an Ivy League school and the pressure around that, how it can set you up, right, in so many ways, and that whole Ivy League culture. And it can be very debilitating for younger lawyers trying to get into the field, to think about this. It's not only it's the stress, and it's not only just the path, it's the stress and the pressure around that and the shame that can happen. While prestige is affirming, it's also limiting, right? Once you get into something like law or medicine, you're considered smart and high achieving, right? Those labels come with you. But then it comes at what cost, to kind of continue to keep chasing that ambition and make sure, and, perfectionism. We all deal with that as professionals, South Asian professionals. And finally, just this definition of success, I think, is a big one that professionals deal with, right? And maybe legal professionals as well. We kind of have this narrow idea of what success is. You can only, drive success by, keep working until even if your body stops, you got to keep going. And regardless if, your emotions are hijacked or you're starting to feel numb, you just keep pushing. And that, I think, we talk about this as something that stems back from generations. Who knows, like maybe colonialist times or something, where we had to do that. That got us through, but now it's not working. And we don't have to accept that as our only path to success. I think there's a lot of these things that kind of get into the way as well, that are part of this conversation.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I was like, me, like all of that happened, to me, and sort of why I've been in therapy for so long. But I think there's so many aspects to being women, to being lawyers, that sort of create challenges for us, and we need to learn how to navigate those. Haritha, I want to have you touch on one other aspect of being women, which is not just hormones, but because of the way we are biologically designed as women, it can also present mental health challenges throughout our lives. So can you talk through some of those aspects as well?
Yeah, I mean, we are not just small males. I think it's, for a long time it was thought, okay, well, women are just like men. In fact, I know this number is staggering. I know, Priya, you've heard it, but women weren't included in clinical trials until 1993. I mean, that's just insane. But as you mentioned, we have very unique sort of transitions in our bodies, like a hormonal transition. So when you think about when we get our periods, if you decide to get pregnant or you're postpartum, if you don't get pregnant and you are trying to get pregnant through the fertility journey, all women, biological women, will go through perimenopause or menopause at some time or another. Sort of that whole journey also makes us more vulnerable to mental health challenges. And so that's a unique aspect. But then there are other things that are just we become more vulnerable too. So, because of our gendered expectations and the societal expectations, as well as our biology, we have a higher incidence of anxiety disorders. We have certain things that are very particular to us, and how it presents, right? So I think when we expect to see everything on the surface, that's the change that's going to be different than maybe with men. And I think what's really important here is that we don't just equate like women and men. And so really understand there's an individual way that these symptoms will present. So I would say that that's, the overarching sort of picture in terms of women and men.
Yeah. And with those differences, Josna, just if you could touch a little bit on what you already mentioned about intergenerational challenges and sort of breaking cycles. Can you add some more insights on that as well?
Yes, we've talked a lot about, and I'm sure in previous conversations about familial expectations and the pressure that we might put on ourselves, right? The narratives that we hold within ourselves and how much, the definition of success again, how much do we strive to, put our body and undergo all these things that Haritha sort of mentioned that, without even sort of thinking we put ourselves last a lot of times. We put our bodies last, we put our healthcare last. And so that can be a detriment. And if that's, we don't want to continue that because that's going to stay within our bodies. And that sort of narrative and that script remains and it moves on to the next generation and beyond. We've already inherited some legacy burdens from our ancestors too, when it comes to, just how we navigate life and professional life and all that kind of stuff. So, that is, I would say, such an important thing to bring awareness about. It's not only just, it's something that's not just impacting ourselves, it's impacting generations to come. And we don't even realize it. And I think it's really important. And I know I was supposed to bring about this idea of mindfulness, and that's something that I use a lot with clients, bringing that mindful awareness of when I'm having or when you're having these kind of thoughts or these kind of narratives. And it may not show so consciously as a thought. It would be a behavior. It would be a feeling. It would be an action. It would be a response, a knee-jerk response. And so mindfulness is a really helpful sort of, I don't want to get into the mode right now, but just quickly to say it's a really helpful sort of reframe to stop, take a pause, stop and see what the body's feeling right now, what the mind is feeling right now, what response I want to give from a more conscious place, from what we call the higher mind or the wiser mind. But I wanted to say, and I don't know if you want me to, I have a few more things I could say about breaking the cycle. One of the things that I feel is really important is women that are already in the field, thinking about, if you're a leader or the kind of work that you do, beginning to recognize those toxic features within the system and within yourself even, that you may have endured, I should say. Not to say, we all hold dark and light. So I think it's okay to say that. you may have endured, a really difficult path ahead, and to use that voice, once you find that awareness, to be able to use your voice, that's a position of privilege, that you can be a change maker and a cycle breaker. You've earned that voice to change the conversation within your families, within your communities, and the field of law. And it's okay to accept your role in perpetuating these issues. It's only when we accept our own complicity in something that a cycle can change, and change can come about. And that goes for any issue. So it starts with owning our role in it. How has it impacted us? How may it shape our belief systems? Encouraged competition instead of celebration of each other, and rivalry maybe instead of cooperation. So that's something I feel like it comes up a lot in therapy. It comes up a lot in thinking about mental health in a professional sense. And I think it's important to just like these panels like this and like finding those places to share stories, helping younger attorneys and recognizing that they aren't alone. And I know you may feel like nobody helped me, but I think you will find that the reward comes in paying it forward, right? And sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. That can be really comforting to somebody else. And that can in turn feel healing for yourself. Seeking these kind of spaces, safer spaces, mentorship without gatekeeping. I know one attorney had mentioned that, the importance of that, continuing to sort of expand representation and creating more sponsorship availability for first-gen South Asian attorneys that are coming through. I just think that so many youth are starved to talk to professionals or shadowing, or I have my own family members that are like, I need to get into an internship, and it's so hard. So I think just having that openness to do that. And I think the final thing I'd add is one of the attorneys I'd interviewed, Sejal Patel, had said so beautifully, reframing the idea of rest by rejecting the glamorization of overwork and seeing boundaries as essential to success. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Thank you for all of that. And for those of you who are watching, I hope your heads were nodding as much as all of our speaker heads were going. Like we were nodding along as you were offering all of those. So I think Josna and Harid.
Sorry,
Oh,
can I
yeah.
say one
Yeah.
thing if you don't mind? Because Joseph
Yeah.
so beautifully talked about intergenerational trauma. And I just wanted to add in that the intergenerational trauma actually, there's evidence showing us now that it not only affects the DNA of the generations, but how the genes are expressed. So we're talking not just now at a psychological level, but at a biological level. And I just think it's so fascinating, right? Because it's easy to think like, oh, we can just break it, or oh, we just know better. And it's like, no, this is actually in our DNA and the way our genes are expressed. And so as we're learning more, we see the real impact of chronic stress and trauma, and that doing work on it, like with the mindfulness practices, can be really beneficial to changing the trajectory of future generations.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much for adding that. I think that's really important as we think through intergenerational cycles and how we want to move forward, so that, as we often say, we want the next generation to be better than us. And so that is really, really important. So I think Joseph and Haritha did a really nice job of setting forth sort of what are the challenges we're facing. Tara and Jaya, I would love for you to break down what this actually looks like in your day-to-day life and in the workplace. So Tara, maybe I can start with you and you can share sort of how it's impacted you.
Yeah, I mean, I started this discussion saying all the challenges I've had over my career. And truthfully, when I went through cancer treatment, I didn't see a therapist. I kind of went through the cancer treatment. I had tongue cancer. I got diagnosed in March of 2012. And that was probably the biggest healthcare challenges of my life, other than having diabetes and other things that are kind of biologically associated with my parents both having diabetes. I was going to get it. But at the same time, this was the biggest challenge. And I thought I would come out of, having overcome my cancer treatment with a different attitude. And I actually went right into my practice of just being an overworker. And I continued that practice for years until about 2015 when I started having panic attacks. I had anxiety attacks, and it was primarily driven by the fact of my workplace. Not that it was a bad workplace, it's just being a lawyer has this natural thing of making you more anxious. It causes it. I'm sure there's studies on it. I don't know the studies. We'll have to ask Harita and Jyotsna to tell us. But genuinely, it just makes you more anxious. You want to hit deadlines. There's a productivity issue, all these things. And through that process in 2015, there was a change. I work primarily with pharmaceutical companies and have for 20 plus years. And the industry had changed. You know, what was like a super lucrative industry had become a little more commoditized in patent litigation, and that's what I do primarily. And it caused me severe anxiety. And I remember going to like a holiday party when the discussion was, hey, the industry has changed, we're going to have to react to it. And in the next 3 months, I was getting more and more anxious about it. And I started having feelings of anxiety, which I didn't recognize. I didn't know I was anxious. And I would not have bouts of insomnia. So I would joke about this, but I used to have like a treadmill next to my bed, which I didn't use effectively, but I would just walk on that treadmill extremely slowly in the middle of the night to calm my anxiety down, which I didn't know. Again, I didn't know it was anxiety. And a friend of mine took me to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. I legit, you know, my heart was racing. I thought I was having a heart attack. I went to the hospital and they said that I had a non-cardiac heart palpitation, which is a panic attack. I had a panic attack. This resulted in me putting myself into therapy, which I've now done from 2015 to present. So 11 years I've been in therapy, not because of that panic attack, but many other things that came after it. But that was the start of it. And that was when I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which a lot of us have without realizing it. And I didn't know that I had it until I got there and my therapist diagnosed me. And I don't take any medication for it. Most of what I do is therapy, you know. But one of the things that I talk about is through this process, after that fact, I did also, I dealt with the divorce after cancer treatment. I did all of those, or before cancer treatment. I did all those things and I got married again in 2019. And then the next set of real challenges in my life started, not because my husband isn't wonderful. If he's listening, he'd be really offended if I didn't say that. He's great, but we tried to have a child and we went through 11 rounds of fertility treatment, 11. And that resulted in other significant mental health challenges because of the failures of all 11 of those rounds. And eventually, and genuinely, having therapy has helped me get through those challenges. It's still challenging to this day. You know, it's been 7 years and we're now on trying to adopt. So that's another challenge. I am perimenopausal, another challenge. And so genuinely through all this, the thing that actually caused me the 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 way to get into therapy was actually a workplace challenge. Yet there was a lot of physical impediments and mental health impediments along the way. But what really drove me to get help was the fact that I wasn't able to be functional in my job. And I think that's a really important part of this that we all need to recognize. Not getting the help that you need is actually going to make you ineffective in your job. And so I would like to make that point to get the help that you need, whether it's a therapist, a psychiatrist to get you the medicine you need to function as a human being. It is really encouraging to do that so that you can be functional in your job. And I think that is something that we all need to recognize. And hopefully, this conversation is not just a one-time conversation. I'm willing to put myself out there as a former president. I'm a very successful attorney. Like all of us here are successful people. we're talking about this because we really care about improving our community and getting them the help that they need. And I am really proud to say that I've gotten that help, and I want other people to get into the position where they feel comfortable to getting that help. That's all I
Yeah.
got.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tara, for sharing all of that. And I think one of the most important things you said is that not getting the help you need will impact your work. And as overachieving South Asian women attorneys, I mean, that is really important to us. We want to be good in our work, but we also want to thrive in our personal life. And so thank you for raising that point. And Jaya, can you share a little bit about how it's showing up, how these challenges show up for you and your clients?
Yeah,
Can I,
absolutely.
sorry, interrupt for one
Yeah.
second? Sorry. I just want to say two quick things, if you don't mind, about what Tara said. So one, thank you for bringing up infertility because we don't talk about infertility enough in our community, and it's a whole different topic, but very important. I agree that not being able to function at work is important, but I just want to make it very clear you don't need to get to that point to seek out help. And I don't think Lara was
100%.
saying that at all. I just want to make very clear because a lot of patients, and I will tell you, I see a lot of attorneys, and they will often come to me and say, but I get out of bed and I go to work and I do my thing. But it's so important for you to know, like, what you feel inside may not show on the outside. And some of my most sick patients actually still perform well on the outside because they've learned coping skills, and that doesn't mean they're as effective as they normally would have been, but they're able to perform. And so again, just want to clarify that you don't
Yeah,
have
and
to,
I,
and
I,
I
I
know
will
you
add
didn't mean
on
that.
because I want to make sure that's the case. I think what my point was, I was actually very functional as an anxious person, super
Mhm.
functional, did not have issues getting my job done, but I had more anxiety about doing that.
That's right.
And
Yes.
I think that was the struggle that I was dealing with. Like, I obviously had a weird coping mechanism. I was walking in the middle of the night and not getting enough sleep. But, and I didn't lose weight, which was really pissing me off. But there was no added benefit to this walking. But I think to me, what was important and why I put myself into therapy was not because I wasn't functional in my job, but I wasn't feeling as functional in the job. And that
Yeah.
is like a different thing than actually being functional. So thank you for pointing that out. I don't want to misconceive anyone. So I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. No, I appreciate
Right.
it.
Yeah, and before we get to Jaya, I actually had a conversation with my therapist, Ruth Ann, this morning about how I'm such a spaz. And she was like, you're not actually a spaz. Just because you feel those things on the inside doesn't mean that's what other people are seeing on the outside. And I think that's another sort of layer that goes into this mental health conversation is like we want to be seen as competent adults and high performing individuals, and doing all the things and checking all the boxes that we need to do. And sometimes we feel differently inside, and that alignment doesn't exist. And I think that's where therapy and a lot of the resources we're going to talk about in a few minutes come in to sort of helping us get to a better understanding of that alignment and appreciating that sometimes, even though it doesn't feel it, it's not showing to those outside of our own individual sort of bodies and minds.
Yeah.
So Jaya, we'll turn to
Yeah,
you.
of course. It's been mentioned many times on this call, but I have anxiety as a high performing South Asian woman, and I've just dealt with it my whole life. I've just coped. I actually didn't even know what it was called until I had a South Asian friend from Palo Alto. Actually, I went to UCLA undergrad. She went to therapy in our freshman year of college, and we were very close. And she said, my therapist said that I have anxiety, and she's like, I think you have it too. And we started talking about it, and I said, "Oh my gosh, if I have this, then my dad definitely has it, right? I definitely got this from somewhere." We used to call my dad the worst case scenario parent in school when I was younger. So I figured out what I have, and that I've just been coping with it forever. When those coping mechanisms fall away because there's too much going on, I'm overwhelmed, or maybe I have anxiety about my anxiety. That's when I start experiencing depression, and I was actually diagnosed with depression first. And then when the anxiety and the depression compound, I start seeing a lot of my brain fog and ADHD and just not being able to function. And this was a very new experience for me last year. 2025 was very rough. Um, so I'm single. I'm not married. I've never been married. I don't have kids. I probably don't want kids. And I've told my family members, my female family members that, including my mother, and I remember the silence in the room when I said it out loud. Um, I think the intergenerational expectations of marriage, kids, following a specific path, having a specific career as a family law attorney, opening my own firm, becoming Indranui, like that is the path that's laid out for so many of us. And that's the probably the biggest challenge for me personally is still trying to carve my own path and figure out what I'm doing and where I'm at. I'm 34 years old, so I'm kind of on that cusp of I might need to make some decisions right now about what my body can and can't do, and or to preserve certain things, preserve certain paths. Um, I think that all of the things that I went through last year, including, being diagnosed with depression, putting myself back in therapy. Therapy saved my life. Again, pushing it on everybody. Therapy has saved my life multiple times. But going back to therapy, it kind of created this, or maybe highlighted the identity crisis that I was facing. We're high achieving women, and I'm so used to being the highest performer in the room or up there. I'm the A minus performer. I like to call myself I'm a type A plus, but I'm a A minus performer, and I'm okay with that. I don't know that I could do any more than that. But trying to divorce my, no pun intended, divorce my identity from being a lawyer, from being a high performer, from being an overachiever, from being that most anxious person in the room. I don't want fear to be driving the decisions I make in my personal life. And anxiety really is fear, right? I don't want that fear to be driving me. I think I've also seen it come up in my in my personal life in many time and time again where I might pick a partner that's not right for me. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I think I'm not going to say this comes from. I don't think this comes from my family normalizing abuse in any way. I think it's just my inclination to pick a path and stick to it and show that I can be consistent and show that I can take care of myself by finding the right partner for me. But sometimes I pick the wrong person because we're, still trying to navigate life. Um, Being president of a pub of Silicon Valley, I think has probably deepened some of these issues or highlighted some of these issues where I spend a lot of time volunteering. I spend a lot of time driving this bar association forward. And yet I'm wondering, when do I get time for myself? How do I carve out time for myself? How do I make sure my whole personality is not networking? How can I be less of a networker and more of just Jaya? Um, so that's kind of just a breakdown of how I see it in my personal life
Yeah.
or the challenges that I face in my personal life. In my professional life, um, I I want to say every South Asian client falls under the umbrella of either experiencing domestic violence in their home, um, either when they were younger or in their marriages. The I think a lot of my clients were pushed down a specific path of migrating to America, and now they have financial handcuffs here in America, and seeking a divorce is very, very, very difficult for them for that reason. Um, we talked about accepting treatment without accepting any kind of treatment and kind of just putting your head down. I think I see that a lot with a lot of my clients. Despite gender, despite sexuality, I feel like in almost every South Asian marriage that I've seen or relationship that I've seen, there's some expectation that everyone is just going to sit there and take it, whatever it might be. They're going to accept that they're living on an allowance. Um, they're going to accept that their partner is not home very often because they're the breadwinner. They're going to accept they might accept, abusive treatment. And it's as their attorney, it's so hard to see, and it's not something that I can prevent, but I can try to address it, right, in the court system, um, or outside of the court system. Um, in terms of my clients' kids, I think that we're lucky in the Bay Area. I'm based in Silicon Valley, as I mentioned. We're lucky that there's a culture of kind of letting kids be kids. I think in the Bay Area, a lot of parents have seen children suffer because of the expectations put on them. So a lot of them, I think, are raising their kids now in just a much better culture of letting them explore their interests, even if their interests are not engineering, lawyering, and and medicine, even if their interests are not robotics, they're allowed to explore what their interests are. They're allowed to pursue unconventional paths, and hopefully those unconventional paths become hopefully we do away with the idea of conventional and unconventional in the future, but I really enjoy seeing that. I do see a normalization of domestic violence for sure in this community. And I just last week, I had a client explain to me the physical violence that their child has experienced. This is a South Asian family. Explained to me the physical violence that her child has experienced, and she does not want to get a restraining order, and she does not want a restraining order for herself, and yet she's too afraid to file for divorce. And my number one concern is this child is going to tell, first of all, going to tell their friends that their other parent is abusing them, but this is going to impact that child's relationships forever if it's normalized, right? If they're not seeking help, if they don't have their own therapist, if their support system, the parents who are supposed to be caring for them emotionally and physically are doing the opposite. This is going to have a lifelong impact and generational impact that we've talked about. So that was my number one concern, and I just see it a lot. We also talked about mentorship without gatekeeping. I do see a lot of gatekeeping too in Silicon Valley, and it might just be the culture here in the legal community. There are a lot of LLM students from India who they're LLM students at Stanford, and yet they're told, don't expect to stay in the Bay Area long term. Don't expect to find a job here. You're going to go back to India. And they network and they want to find jobs and they want to meet people and they want to, maybe they want to date. Maybe they want to get married. I want them to live their lives the way they want to live their lives. And yet I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping of internships and interviews and connections. And I do my best to try to, nip that in the bud. I do my best to try to connect everyone with everybody because if I can help you, I'm going to. Someone in this call mentioned earlier that maybe the mentality is, well, I didn't get help. I did this all on my own. And I've said this so many times, I'll say it again. I think there are truly two types of people in the world. There's the people who say, um, I had it hard and I don't want you to have it hard. Or I had it difficult, or I had a hard path, and so you must have a hard path as well. And I would love to be in the first camp always, and I would love to be surrounded by people that are in the first camp. We always want to help the people that come after us, no matter what they look like, no matter their backgrounds. I think that's so, so important. So in my professional life, I try not to gatekeep, and I definitely try to guide. And sometimes that means being more honest than others, but people love it. Hello, Kat. Anyway, yeah, I can talk about tools for addressing those challenges later, but yeah, that's just kind of how I see it in my personal and my professional life.
Yeah, so this has been an amazing conversation. And, Tara and Jaya, thank you for being so open and honest about the challenges that you have faced in your careers, because I think hearing that helps all of us sort of be better because we identify and we feel more comfortable sharing and normalizing conversation. We have 6 minutes left in our conversation. So I would love to do sort of a rapid fire round with all of you where you share either sort of resources that are available or actions that those who are listening to this conversation can take. And knowing that this is the first of many conversations that SAWAN is going to have related to mental health, and will be the first of many opportunities to talk about resources and coping skills. But give us your top 1 to 2 in sort of a quick fashion so that we can wrap up our conversation. Tara, I'll start with you.
I think the call to action is simple. Talk to someone, whether it's a colleague, friend, or family member, and break the silence around mental health. If you can't heal unless you acknowledge an issue, and your mental health matters, and taking care of it is not selfish, it's important and it's realistic. So that's what I want to make my call of action in terms of resources. We already talked about therapy. Other things are exercise is really important to this. Connecting, I think many of us have had challenges talking to our family members about our mental health challenges. And I think it's important for us to figure out a strategy towards doing that. So those are my calls to action for myself and others. And hopefully we can all do that together and improve our community.
Excellent. Thank you, Jaya.
My two things, boundaries. I have to have very good boundaries between my work and my personal life. That doesn't mean I'm less of a lawyer, doesn't mean I'm doing a worse job at my job. But I have to have clear boundaries. And cultivating a community of people that support those boundaries. It's one thing to have a boundary, it's another thing to enforce it. And the people that are negatively impacted by your boundaries are the ones that are going to be uncomfortable with them. And so you have to find people that are, willing to support your boundaries. Number one. Number two, pushing therapy on everybody. Because I think everyone needs someone to talk to. And then number three, personally for me, physical fitness is very important. If I don't work out for a week, I just feel terrible after, and I'm like, what's wrong? Oh, I didn't work out. It's for me, it's just staying active, making sure I'm getting out of bed every day. Honestly, it's very, very important for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Josna.
I'm going to go back to reframing rest. Self-care, it's not selfish, it's necessary. I'm going to add to the call for therapy, the voices that are already saying this. It can make, just a world of difference. Obviously, people have already shared their experiences and in that space. And I am so happy to hear that you've had good therapists, because I've heard people not having great experiences. So you can take your time to find the right one. And I'm available for, sharing resources or, referrals and things like that. And I would also say, think about your own definition of success. Just when you have some time, and how it sort of drives your physical and mental well-being, and sort of what has been helpful in that definition and what has not been so helpful. And, and if you have kids, what do you want them to learn about your definition, and what do you want to change about it? And totally echoing what Haritha says, it is pretty much in your DNA right now. It is in our DNA. But thank goodness for neuroplasticity of our brains. We can really work to change this. It's a conscious awareness, though, constantly of having to think about this, but it's a good thing. It's something that we can keep coming back to and keep sort of cultivating. So
Yeah,
my 2 cents.
wonderful. Marita, we'll give you the last word.
Thank you. So I bet you weren't thinking I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say talk to yourself, which I know sounds crazy coming from psychiatrists, but check in with yourself. Really normalize, whether you're journaling, whether you actually talk to yourself in the car, but we're so busy worrying about all the external things. Let's internalize for a moment and say what's going on. And then from there, I think Dara had said it, talk to somebody else. So whether it's a therapist, family, friends, etc., especially in our community, if we talk about mental health openly, like we talk about other things, we reduce stigma. And reducing stigma is the way that we're going to all thrive together. So I think talking to yourself, checking in with yourself, recognizing that your mental health is super important, because it not only impacts you mentally, but also physically, and then definitely reducing stigma. Resources, there is a resource list. I think everyone and people are from everywhere. So of South Asian therapists, if you're looking for culturally competent care, there's psychologytoday.com, which can be hard to find a clinician, who you may connect with. But again, just giving you resources to find people. But really the best way is asking people Ask, even if it feels overwhelming, this is when we are vulnerable, we allow other people to be vulnerable. This is how we grow together. There are lots of resources. You are not alone. That is huge. You are not alone. If I can give a quick story, I promise it's a very fast story, but one of the closest people to me who's a physician in the mental health space was struggling with mental health related to infertility and said, don't tell anybody. And I'm going to say, tell everybody, not because I want your privacy out there, but this is what creates that silence, really fuels the stigma around it. So, yeah, I'm also happy to, if you guys need any other resources or have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yes. Well, thank you all for being here, and for sharing sort of the clinical perspective behind the challenges that we're facing and what we need to do to move forward, as well as sort of the practical, how this shows up for us in the workplace, in our interactions with our family and our friends every day. I think the balance of both aspects of this conversation has been really insightful. And as I said, this is the first of many conversations that SAWAN is going to have about mental health. We did not get the opportunity to take questions from the audience, but as each of our speakers have said, they are here as a resource to all of you. So find them on LinkedIn, connect with them. If you have questions for them, please reach out. And feel free to reach out to me as well in the work that I'm doing in women's health and mental health and sort of making the healthcare system easier to navigate. I am also always happy to be a resource to any of you. And so with that, thank you again to our speakers. This was a fantastic conversation, and I feel like we could have talked for hours about all the layers of this issue. But I will turn it back to Karen, and thank you again, Karen, for bringing us all together.
Thank you so much, Priya, and thank you so much, panelists. I mean, this was an amazing conversation, and I can't wait to have many more. There's so many things that I resonated with, but we're out of time. But I do want to leave you all with one thing. I'm a big Tony Soprano fan, and his therapy, his therapist had a therapist, and there's a reason for that. So please, let's normalize therapy. Let's get the help that we all need. We are juggling so many things. Including things like these. So I love that we're going to continue these conversations. Thank you for providing all the resources that you have. As Priya mentioned, everyone here is a very busy professional, but they are taking the time and making time for you. And that in itself shows the importance that this has. So thank you again. And thank you, Savan, for providing this platform. We'll continue to have these conversations. And this will be posted on YouTube, you guys. So please share this. We want to spread the word. We want to make sure that there is help out there, and we want to continue conversations like these. And thank you again for all your time.
Yep.
Have a
Thank you,
good day.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.